Hello everyone, and welcome back to True Soul Stories TV. Tonight we dive into a story that will take you into the heart of a forbidden desire, a confession that was never meant to see the light of day. A night of storms both outside and within changed everything, and from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. Emily Carter, 28, a young widow, stood in the dimly lit living room, her hair damp from the rain, her eyes wide and alert. Across from her, William Carter, her father-in-law, 72, still strong from decades of carpentry and ranch work, moved closer. His silver hair caught the soft glow from the lamp, but it was his eyes that held the intensity that made Emily's pulse quicken. In that instant, they were no longer father-in-law and daughter-in-law. They were two people, raw and exposed, drawn to each other by something neither could explain nor resist. William reached out, his hand brushing hers, a simple gesture, yet loaded with tension. Emily's breath caught. Instead of stepping back, she leaned slightly closer, the space between them charged with a forbidden electricity. The rain pounded harder against the roof, masking the subtle sounds of the house, the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of wind through the cracks, and then a moment that should never have existed. Their lips met. It was hesitant at first, a tentative brush of warmth against cold, but the heat between them ignited instantly. Emily felt herself melting into him, a mixture of fear, guilt, and undeniable desire swirling in her chest. Outside, the storm raged, as if it knew the secret unfolding within. The wind howled through the trees like a chorus, echoing the forbidden rhythm of two hearts colliding. Each breath, each heartbeat, pulled them closer, erasing the lines drawn by family and society. Tonight, the narrator's voice cut in softly, you will see how a single night can unravel everything, how a forbidden connection hidden behind polite smiles and quiet evenings, can become an unstoppable force. What begins as a fleeting moment of desire may shape the destiny of lives forever. And in that dim light, in the embrace of a storm, Emily and William surrendered to a temptation neither wanted to admit, but both could no longer deny. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting long, pale stripes across the wooden floor. Emily awoke with a start, her heart still racing from the night before. Her body felt electrified, tingling with memories she both feared and longed to repeat. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breath, but the image of William's intense gaze and the feel of his hands lingered, unrelenting. Downstairs, the soft scrape of a chair against the floor announced that William was already in the kitchen. Emily hesitated outside the doorway, her hand lightly brushing the frame, her mind a whirl of confusion. Was it possible that last night had really happened? And if it had, how could she face him now, as if nothing had changed? William, unaware of her presence at first, stirred the coffee slowly, his hands steady but his thoughts turbulent. The night replayed in his mind like a film he could not stop. The rain, the heat, the forbidden touch. He told himself it was impossible. He was too old, she was his daughter-in-law, but the truth clawed at him relentlessly. Emily, he called gently, as if sensing her hesitation. Come down for breakfast. Jake's already waiting. She descended the stairs, trying to mask the tremor in her hands, the quickened pace of her heartbeat. Jake, her 6-year-old son, bounded toward her, oblivious to the tension between the adults. His laughter was a bright, innocent contrast to the storm still raging quietly in the air. As they ate, the silence stretched between Emily and William, punctuated only by the clink of cutlery and Jake's cheerful chatter. Every glance they exchanged was loaded, fleeting, careful not to linger too long. Guilt twisted in Emily's stomach, but a strange warmth blossomed as well, a mixture of shame and something dangerously close to longing. William excused himself to the porch, pretending to check the weather, but in truth he was trying to steady his thoughts. He knew he had crossed a line last night, Yet the memory of Emily in his arms refused to fade. He rubbed his face, taking in a deep breath, trying to summon reason over desire, but the line between restraint and temptation felt impossibly thin. "Emily," he finally said when she approached, his voice low and steady, "about last night, He stopped, unable to finish. Words felt meaningless against the gravity of what had occurred. Emily nodded slightly, understanding, yet saying nothing. Neither wanted to acknowledge it fully, and yet neither could ignore the electric tension that remained. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, as if whispering secrets neither dared speak aloud. The morning was bright, but the shadows of the night lingered in the corners of the farmhouse, reminding them both that nothing would ever be the same. And so the day began, quiet and ordinary to anyone else, but charged with a forbidden intensity that neither Emily nor William could escape. The days passed quietly, the farmhouse settling into a fragile routine. Jake played outside, oblivious to the currents swirling between his mother and grandfather. Emily found herself glancing toward William more often than she dared admit, noticing the way his hands moved when he fixed a shelf, or how his eyes softened when he spoke to her son. One evening, Emily stayed behind after putting Jake to bed. The house was hushed except for the soft hum of the wind outside. She heard William in the kitchen, quietly putting away dishes, the scrape of silverware against the counter loud in the stillness. She approached him, her footsteps hesitant. "Do you need help?" she asked softly, trying to keep her voice steady. William looked up, his gaze lingering just a second too long. "If you don't mind," he said, masking the tension in his chest with a calm tone. As they worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushed. Each touch was fleeting, almost accidental, yet it left a trail of warmth that neither could ignore. Emily's pulse quickened every time he leaned closer, the scent of his aftershave mingling with the aroma of the evening coffee. They moved together in silent rhythm, arranging plates and tidying counters, yet a charged energy filled the air, like a storm held in suspension. Emily found herself imagining what it would be like if the distance between them vanished completely, if the tension that crackled with every glance became action. William, aware of the same temptation, tried to focus on the chores, telling himself it was impossible. Yet each time Emily laughed softly at a small mistake, his restraint faltered. He realized that the boundaries he had held for decades were eroding, swept away by a longing that was both forbidden and undeniable. Later, Emily lingered near the doorway, watching him sip coffee at the table. The sight of him alone, calm yet strong, stirred something she didn't understand fully. A shiver ran down her spine as she felt the pull of desire and guilt entwined. She wanted to step closer, to reach for him, yet the walls of propriety and memory held her back. For now. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows, echoing the turmoil inside the house. Inside, neither spoke of the night before, yet both carried its weight in every look, every subtle movement, every brush of hands. The forbidden tension between them grew, a quiet temptation, lingering in the corners of the old farmhouse, waiting for the moment it could no longer be ignored. The house was silent. Jake had fallen asleep upstairs, his soft breathing a steady rhythm in the dark. Emily sat on the living room couch, a book in her hands, though her mind was far from the words on the pages. She could hear William moving in the kitchen, the faint clatter of dishes as he cleaned up after dinner. Something in the quiet made the tension between them nearly unbearable. Emily set the book aside, her hands twisting in her lap. She knew he was there, and she could feel the pull of the night, the same forbidden energy that had surged between them before. William stepped into the living room carrying 2 mugs of tea. He hesitated for a moment, noticing the way Emily looked up at him, the way her eyes caught the dim light and held a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something deeper. He placed a mug beside her. "Here," he said softly. It's chamomile. Helps with rest. Emily nodded, her fingers brushing against the mug, brushing against his hand, just briefly, almost innocently, but it sent a jolt through both of them. Neither spoke. The air seemed thick, charged with desire and guilt in equal measure. He sat down across from her, careful to maintain distance, but the tension was palpable. Every subtle movement, the tilt of her head, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, made his chest tighten. His thoughts wrestled with reason and longing. He told himself he must not, he cannot, but every fiber of his being rebelled. Emily's pulse raced. She realized she could no longer pretend the memory of that night wasn't alive inside her. The warmth of his presence was overwhelming, the scent of him, the quiet strength in his voice. It all drew her closer, even as she tried to resist. William finally broke the silence. "Emily, about last night," he said, his voice low, tremulous. I don't know how to handle this." She looked at him, eyes wide, heart pounding. "I know," she whispered. "I don't either, but it's real, isn't it?" The words hung in the air like a fragile promise, fragile yet undeniable. He reached out, almost imperceptibly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her eyes closed at the touch, and in that small, silent moment, the line between restraint and surrender wavered dangerously. The wind outside intensified, rattling the windows. Inside, the room seemed to shrink around them, drawing them closer. Neither spoke, yet the tension grew, as if the house itself recognized the forbidden pull. Emily's breath hitched, and William's hands trembled slightly as he fought to maintain control, knowing that every second brought them closer to a point of no return. And in that quiet, loaded night, the unspoken desire between them burned hotter, a storm contained within walls, waiting for a release neither could resist forever. The living room felt smaller tonight, the shadows longer, the silence heavier. Emily's hands fidgeted with the edge of her sweater as she stole glances at William. He sat opposite her, his posture taut, the weight of unspoken words pressing down like a storm ready to break. "You don't have to say anything," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. The tension in her chest was unbearable. I understand." William swallowed hard, his jaw tight. He knew she did, yet hearing it out loud made it feel dangerously real. His heart pounded, and he was painfully aware of how close she was, how her warmth called to something primal he had never allowed himself to feel. Without thinking, he leaned slightly forward, and Emily's breath hitched. The air seemed to thrum around them, charged with the memory of last night and the promise of what might come. Her hand trembled as it rested near his, and he reached out, brushing it lightly. That single touch sent sparks through both of them, undeniable and consuming. Outside, the wind rattled the windows as if echoing the storm inside. Their eyes met, and in that silent moment all pretense fell away. They were no longer father-in-law and daughter-in-law, just two human beings, bound by longing and temptation, too strong to resist. He closed the distance, cautiously at first, then with increasing certainty. Emily did not pull back. Instead, she met him halfway, the hesitation giving way to a slow, trembling acceptance. The tension snapped like a taut wire, and suddenly there was no more restraint. Hands brushed and lingered. A soft, almost startled sigh escaped Emily as William's presence enveloped her. Each heartbeat seemed amplified, every nerve alive, as though the room itself was aware of the forbidden act unfolding. Their closeness was electric, a mixture of fear and desire, guilt and exhilaration. "Emily." William's voice was low, hoarse. I shouldn't." "I know," she breathed. "Neither of us should, but I can't stop." And in that confession, the dam broke. The storm outside raged louder, the house vibrating with the intensity of the night. But inside, it was only the two of them. Every glance, every touch, every subtle movement blurred the lines of propriety. What began as a careful, forbidden dance had become an unstoppable force. For that one night, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only them, their hearts pounding in unison, their breaths mingling, their secret burning hotter with every passing second. And though both knew the consequences, neither wanted to think about them. The only reality that mattered was this dangerous, intoxicating closeness that could no longer be denied. Sunlight poured softly through the thin curtains, but the brightness did nothing to ease the heaviness in the room. Emily awoke first, the memories of the previous night pressing down on her chest. Every touch, every glance, every whispered word replayed with vivid clarity. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Downstairs, William moved about the kitchen quietly, pretending to prepare breakfast, but each step was weighed down by guilt. His hands shook slightly as he poured coffee, his mind trapped between desire and shame. The night before had crossed a line he had promised himself never to approach, and yet here he was, both haunted and drawn by the memory. Emily descended the stairs slowly, her heart hammering with both longing and dread. She saw him at the counter, calm on the surface but tense beneath, and her stomach twisted. Words failed her. What could she say after what had happened? How could either of them pretend the boundary hadn't been shattered? "Morning," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. William glanced up, his gaze lingering for a moment too long. "Morning," he replied, keeping his tone neutral, though the tension between them was thick enough to slice through the room. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, Jake happily nibbling on his cereal, unaware of the charged silence between the adults. Every glance, every slight movement carried the weight of their secret. Emily's fingers toyed with the edge of her mug, tracing invisible patterns, as if trying to ground herself in something ordinary. I need to be careful," William finally said, his voice low and taut. "We can't. Not again. Not like last night." Emily nodded, biting her lip, understanding the gravity of his words. "I know," she whispered. "But I can't pretend it didn't happen either." Guilt twisted inside them, mingling with an undeniable longing neither wanted to admit. The air seemed heavier, laden with the memory of closeness, yet the reality of boundaries pressed firmly on their shoulders. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, echoing the turmoil in their hearts. They went through the motions of the morning, preparing breakfast, talking lightly about Jake, making small talk, but each word was measured, each glance calculated. The tension was palpable, a silent reminder that what had begun as temptation was far from over, and the consequences would not wait quietly for them. By the time Emily left for work, the house was quiet, yet the echoes of the previous night lingered. Both of them carried a secret they could neither confront openly nor deny internally, a delicate tension threading through every shared glance and unspoken word. The storm had passed temporarily, but its shadow remained, promising that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The evening descended over the farmhouse like a soft curtain, painting the walls in shades of amber and gold. Jake was already asleep upstairs, his small breathing steady and even. The house seemed calm, but beneath that calm, tension simmered like an untamed current. Emily lingered in the living room, her thoughts tangled with guilt and desire. She kept replaying William's every glance, every touch from the previous night, and the memory both thrilled and frightened her. She knew the line had been crossed, yet part of her craved the forbidden closeness more than ever. William emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Their eyes met across the room, and for a brief, loaded second, Neither could look away. There was no need for words. The silence itself spoke volumes. He approached slowly, as though every step measured the boundary between restraint and surrender. "Emily," he began, his voice low and hesitant, we need to be careful." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I know," she whispered, "but I can't ignore it either. Not anymore." The air between them thickened, heavy with unspoken confessions and desires they could no longer deny. Hands brushed again, slightly, almost imperceptibly, but the spark was undeniable. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine, a mixture of fear and anticipation, and she realized she was powerless against the pull. They moved closer, cautiously at first, every gesture deliberate. The room seemed to shrink around them, enclosing them in their shared tension. Every breath, every heartbeat became magnified, echoing the storm of feelings they tried to suppress. William reached out, lightly resting a hand near hers. Emily didn't pull away. Instead, she allowed herself a brief moment of surrender. Their eyes met, holding a depth of emotion neither could voice. Longing, guilt, and a fragile sense of connection. Outside, the wind whispered against the windows, as though the house itself understood the dangerous closeness. Inside, the forbidden thread between them pulled taut, and Emily realized that no matter how careful they tried to be, the current between them had become unstoppable. In that quiet, amber-lit room, they existed in a world separate from the rules of society, a space where desire, fear, and forbidden affection intertwined. And though both knew the consequences of giving in, the tension between them promised that the path forward would be increasingly fraught with passion, guilt, and the hidden currents of a secret that could never be undone. The golden light of late afternoon spilled through the living room windows, painting the floor in warm streaks. Emily was tidying up, her heart still fluttering from the lingering closeness she shared with William the night before. Every small movement made her aware of the invisible tension that existed between them now, a dangerous secret simmering beneath polite conversation and household routines. William was in the kitchen, methodically washing the few dishes left from lunch, though his hands were shaking ever so slightly. He could feel her presence nearby, the electric pull that had grown stronger since their night together. He tried to focus on the mundane task, but the image of her sitting just a few feet away, eyes bright and lips slightly parted, made his chest tighten. Suddenly, the sound of the front door creaking open echoed through the house. Emily's heart leapt into her throat. "Jake," she called a little too casually, trying to hide her panic. "Hey, Mom! I got home early!" Jake's cheerful voice came from the entryway, completely unaware of the tension filling the house. Emily's stomach twisted. She had not expected him for another hour. William stiffened, instinctively moving to straighten the kitchen counter. He wiped his hands quickly, masking the trembling that betrayed the night's events. Emily shot him a quick, almost imperceptible glance. Panic and desire collided in that single look, and for a moment the room seemed impossibly small. "Did you finish your project?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yeah, and I even got a snack on the way," Jake replied, bounding toward the living room with his backpack slung over one shoulder. The sound of his laughter was a bright contrast to the heavy, unspoken tension between his mother and William. As Jake settled down with his snack, Emily and William exchanged a silent, loaded glance. The secret they shared felt suddenly more dangerous, more real. Every small movement, every accidental brush of hands carried the weight of guilt and desire intertwined. Their proximity was almost unbearable, yet neither could bring themselves to act differently. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She realized that moments of peace between them were fleeting, fragile, and vulnerable to interruption. The presence of her son, a reminder of their societal boundaries and the life they had built, forced them to mask what had ignited between them, at least for now. William leaned against the counter, letting out a quiet sigh. "We need to keep our distance," he murmured, his eyes briefly meeting hers. Emily nodded silently, her heart aching. The temptation was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but for now, the intrusion of reality reminded them of the dangerous line they had crossed, a line that could never be ignored. The house was quiet again once Jake settled, but the air remained charged. Both of them knew that the hidden currents of desire between them were far from over. They had merely been paused, waiting for the next moment of vulnerability, the next shadowed opportunity. The house settled into an uneasy quiet after Jake's early return, but the tension between Emily and William refused to dissipate. Every glance, every small gesture reminded them of the night they had crossed a boundary neither thought possible. They both understood the danger, yet the forbidden pull had only grown stronger. Emily found herself stealing glances at William when she thought he wasn't looking. The way his hands moved, the subtle crease between his brows, the faint scent lingering from last night, all of it stirred a complicated cocktail of desire and guilt. She clenched her fists at her sides, trying to anchor herself to reality, but the ache inside her would not be ignored. William, meanwhile, attempted to focus on mundane chores, dishes, laundry, straightening the living room, anything to keep his mind away from the magnetic presence of Emily. Yet even as he scrubbed, he could feel her presence like heat, radiating across the room. He knew that every moment they shared in proximity was a dangerous spark, one that could ignite uncontrollably if he let it. As Emily moved to the counter to grab a glass, their hands brushed lightly. Both froze for a heartbeat, the contact electric. Neither withdrew, neither acknowledged it verbally, but the air between them thickened with unspoken agreement. Desire simmered in the silence, an invisible thread pulling them closer despite their better judgment. I shouldn't be thinking this way, William muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. His gaze fell to the floor, yet he could feel Emily watching, understanding without a word. Emily's chest tightened, her mind spinning. "Neither should I," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Yet even as she said it, a small, guilty part of her hoped he would step closer, break the silence, break the rules again. They moved through the evening cautiously, aware that every small act could tip the delicate balance. Emily prepared dinner while William cleaned up after Jake, their motions deliberately nonchalant. Yet each fleeting brush of hands or accidental touch stoked the embers of their secret connection. Outside, the wind carried the sound of rustling leaves, as though nature itself recognized the tension inside. Inside, the forbidden attraction between them grew more palpable, more urgent. They were trapped in a delicate dance, wanting to resist, yet powerless against the tide of temptation. The night promised nothing but uncertainty. Each of them understood the danger of giving in, yet deep down, both knew that their secret, forbidden desires were far from extinguished. It was a silent agreement, unspoken but mutual. The fire was alive, and neither had the strength or the will to snuff it out. The house was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional creak of floorboards. Jake was fast asleep upstairs, his small figure curled beneath the covers. In the quiet darkness below, Emily and William moved like shadows, each aware of the other's presence, each feeling the electric pull that neither could resist. Emily had stayed up, ostensibly finishing work for the next day, but the truth was far simpler. She was drawn to the living room, drawn to William. Every memory of last night lingered on her skin, every glance from him replayed in her mind. Her heart raced as she approached the counter, pretending to check on a forgotten cup of tea, knowing full well he would notice. William, seated on the sofa, was pretending to read a newspaper, but his eyes, impossibly aware, tracked every subtle movement Emily made. He tried to remain composed, tried to maintain the line of propriety, yet the sight of her, hair cascading softly around her face, the curve of her shoulders catching the dim lamplight, stirred emotions he had spent decades trying to suppress. A sudden sound made them both freeze. Jake's small cough came from upstairs, breaking the tension briefly, reminding them of the impossible reality surrounding their desire. They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Tonight, they had to be careful, yet the magnetic pull was undeniable. Emily's fingers brushed against his as she reached for the teacup, and both flinched, though neither withdrew. Their eyes met, and in that shared gaze unspoken truths flared. Longing, guilt, fear, and a desperate need that neither could voice aloud. "William, Emily's voice was barely audible, trembling as she tried to capture the depth of emotion boiling inside her. He reached out instinctively, lightly resting his hand over hers. "I know," he murmured. "I feel it too. But we have to—" He broke off, swallowing hard, the weight of their secret pressing down. The room seemed to shrink around them, each heartbeat magnified, each breath charged with tension. Slowly, cautiously, they allowed themselves a fleeting closeness, leaning just a fraction too near. The air was thick with the forbidden, and yet strangely tender. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, whispering against the windows, like the world itself was conspiring to remind them of the danger. Inside, Emily and William existed in a bubble of secrecy, desire, and guilt. They were tethered by longing, yet bound by conscience, caught in a night that promised nothing but tension, an unspoken bond that would continue to shape their days and their nights for an uncertain future. As they finally withdrew slightly, the dim glow of the lamp revealed the strain etched on both faces. They were exhausted, not physically but emotionally, trapped between their desires and the moral lines they could not fully cross. The night had tested them, intensified the forbidden fire, and left them both craving more, even as guilt gnawed quietly at the edges of their hearts. The following days carried a strange rhythm, a tense dance of normalcy and suppressed desire. Emily moved through her routines with an uneasy grace, preparing meals, tidying the house, and checking on Jake. To an outsider, everything seemed ordinary, but inside, every glance at William sent shivers down her spine. Every touch brushed against a hidden fire they both tried desperately to ignore. William, meanwhile, was restless, and he found himself lingering near Emily more than necessary, drawn to her presence like a moth to a flame. Each accidental touch, each fleeting brush of hands, made his pulse race and guilt churn in his chest. He knew the line they had crossed the night before had left them both vulnerable, yet the temptation refused to abate. One afternoon, as Emily straightened a stack of papers on the counter, William came behind her, ostensibly to hand her a folder. Their hands collided briefly, fingers grazing, and both froze. Emily's heart thumped in her chest as she felt the electric spark of that small contact. She turned slightly, meeting William's eyes, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. "We have to be careful," William whispered, his voice low, almost choked with emotion. "I know," Emily replied, swallowing hard, "but it's getting harder." Their mutual confession hung in the air, a dangerous admission neither could deny. Just as William opened his mouth to respond, the sound of footsteps on the porch made them both jump. Emily's eyes widened. Her neighbor, Mrs. Latham, had come unexpectedly to check on the boy. "Hello, is anyone home?" Mrs. Latham called, oblivious to the storm brewing inside. Emily and William quickly separated, hearts still racing. "I'll get it," Emily said, forcing a calm she did not feel, her pulse hammering in her ears. She opened the door, smiling politely, hiding the rapid fire of thoughts and forbidden emotions that had just erupted behind her. Once Mrs. Latham had left, the house seemed smaller, suffocating in its silence. The closeness they had shared earlier now felt impossible, and the risk of discovery loomed like a dark shadow over every interaction. Despite the intrusion, the desire between them had not diminished. It had only grown more potent, Every day, every glance, every unspoken word added layers to the tension, drawing them deeper into a dangerous web of forbidden longing. Both Emily and William realized that the days ahead would test their restraint, their moral boundaries, and their ability to survive the pull of temptation without destroying the life they had built. The fire they tried to hide burned brighter than ever, and they understood that the slightest misstep could ignite it in ways neither could control. The evening descended quietly, with a soft amber glow spilling through the curtains. Jake was at a friend's house for a sleepover, giving Emily and William a rare window of privacy. The stillness of the house was intoxicating, a dangerous invitation neither wanted to resist. Emily moved through the living room, pretending to organize the books on the shelf, but her heart raced with anticipation. William was sitting nearby, pretending to read a magazine, though his eyes betrayed his thoughts. Every glance at her made it impossible to ignore the tension that hung like thick silk between them. I thought I'd grab a drink," Emily said, keeping her voice casual. She could feel William's gaze following her every movement. The electricity in the room was palpable, the forbidden desire simmering just beneath the surface. William set his magazine down, leaning slightly forward. "I can help," he offered, his voice low and hesitant, betraying the storm inside him. Their hands brushed accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, when she reached for the glasses. Both flinched, yet neither withdrew. The contact was brief, but it sparked a silent acknowledgement of the dangerous longing that neither dared to voice. Emily's pulse quickened as she turned, facing him. "William, I shouldn't feel this way," she whispered, though the quiver in her voice betrayed her. "I know," he murmured, inching closer, "but neither of us can deny it anymore." They stood in tense proximity, hearts pounding, every second stretching as though time itself held its breath. The empty house became their private world, a fragile cocoon where desire and guilt danced dangerously close. William's hand moved slowly, almost reverently, toward hers. Emily did not pull away. Instead, she allowed the moment, savoring the electricity that crackled between them. Each subtle motion, each lingering glance, fanned the flames of a fire that had been smoldering for days. The night was theirs alone, and yet every shadow seemed to whisper warnings of the consequences they faced. But the temptation, the need, was overwhelming. For this one evening, the world outside ceased to exist. Only the heat between them, the tension, and the forbidden connection mattered. In the quiet of the living room, they discovered a fleeting freedom in their closeness, a brief, stolen moment where desire eclipsed guilt. Yet both knew this was only the beginning. Every secret encounter added weight, and the risk of exposure was an ever-present shadow lurking just beyond the walls of their sanctuary. The house felt smaller, almost suffocating, as Emily and William moved closer in the dim light of the living room. The warmth between them was undeniable, a forbidden magnet that neither could resist. Every brush of hands, every shared glance, intensified the storm building inside them. Emily's breath hitched as William's fingers grazed hers again, deliberate this time. The contact was electric, sending shivers down her spine and igniting a fire she had fought to suppress. She knew this was dangerous, morally impossible, yet every instinct screamed to lean in, to give in. William's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the consequences of their actions, the moral lines they were crossing, yet the temptation was irresistible. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, and his usual self-restraint wavered under the weight of desire. "Emily, we can't," he whispered, his voice low, trembling with emotion. Yet even as he spoke, he stepped closer, drawn to her in ways that reason could not control. Her eyes met his, full of conflicted longing. "I know, I shouldn't," she admitted, the quiver in her voice betraying her inner turmoil. But the ache inside her, the yearning for connection and intimacy, overpowered every thought of caution. Their hands intertwined, fingers lacing naturally, as if destiny itself had conspired to bring them together. The room seemed to close in around them, the walls echoing their unspoken confession. Every heartbeat, every shiver of contact, heightened the forbidden intimacy. For a moment they paused, aware of the gravity of their actions. The line between desire and morality blurred, and they understood that one wrong move could shatter everything. Yet the pull was too strong, the connection too deep. Slowly, tentatively, they allowed themselves to lean into the temptation, their foreheads touched, breaths mingling, hearts racing in unison. In that brief, stolen moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only the two of them, trapped in a web of longing and guilt, teetering on the edge of something neither could fully name. As they finally pulled back, hearts still racing, both knew that the night had changed everything. Every glance, every touch from that point forward carried the weight of possibility and peril. The line they had crossed could not be undone, and the thrill of their secret would haunt them in the days to come, urging them toward further risk, further temptation. The following morning carried a heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere. Emily went about her routine with a quiet tension, each step echoing in the house like a warning. William lingered at the kitchen counter, his mind replaying every fleeting touch and stolen glance from the night before. They both knew that what had started as a moment of temptation could no longer remain hidden without consequences. A sudden knock at the door made them both start. Emily hesitated, her hand trembling slightly as she approached. "Who could that be?" she whispered, half to herself. William's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but we should be careful." Emily opened the door to reveal a courier holding a small package. "Delivery for Emily Harper," the man said, handing it over. As soon as the door closed, she felt a strange knot of unease tighten in her stomach. She turned the box over in her hands, noticing the label. There was no sender, only her name in neat handwriting. William leaned over her shoulder, glancing at the package. "That's unusual. Did you order anything?" "No," Emily replied, voice low, her pulse quickening. Something about the anonymity of the package felt ominous. The house, usually a haven for their stolen moments, now seemed like a trap, every corner holding the potential for exposure. With trembling fingers, Emily opened the package. Inside was a single photograph, taken from the living room last night. The angle suggested someone had been watching, someone who had seen everything. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "William, someone saw us." He froze, his expression a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. "How? Who?" His mind raced through the possibilities, every scenario darker than the last. They had been reckless, and now the first tangible consequence had arrived. Emily sank into the sofa, the weight of the photograph in her hands. "We can't ignore this. We have to figure out who's watching, or this could destroy everything." The tension between them intensified, no longer just fueled by desire, but by fear. Their secret was no longer confined to their private world. It had crossed into reality. Every look, every whispered word now carried the weight of potential exposure. For the first time, Emily and William realized that temptation came with consequences, and the very walls they had considered their sanctuary were now silent witnesses to the fragile, dangerous bond they had formed. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. The photograph lay on the kitchen table, a silent accusation neither Emily nor William could ignore. The morning sun streamed in, mocking the tension in the room, as if the world outside had no idea of the storm brewing inside. Every movement felt measured now, every glance calculated. They were walking on thin ice, and one misstep could shatter the fragile illusion of normalcy they had fought to maintain. Emily busied herself with breakfast, her hands shaking slightly. "We need to act like nothing happened," she said, though her voice was tight, betraying her anxiety. If anyone suspects, everything falls apart. William nodded, his jaw clenched. I'll be extra careful. We can't let anyone know, not even Jake. His gaze flickered to his grandson, playing innocently in the next room, blissfully unaware of the tension that now colored the house. For the next few days, the atmosphere was tense, almost unbearable. They continued their routines, but every touch, every shared smile carried a dangerous edge. The desire between them had not diminished. It had been sharpened by fear, by the looming threat of exposure. Every encounter was charged, a secret thrill that teetered dangerously close to recklessness. One afternoon, Emily received a text from an unknown number. I saw you last night. Be careful. I know what's going on. Her pulse quickened, and she felt the familiar rush of panic and shame. She showed William, who immediately felt the weight of impending crisis. This is serious, he muttered, his voice low. We have to find out who's watching us before they act. They spent the evening reviewing every visitor, every delivery, every interaction that might have left a trail. The tension was palpable, their proximity to each other now both a comfort and a danger. Each accidental touch made their hearts race, but it also reminded them of what was at stake. The house, once a haven for their stolen moments, now felt like a trap. They were two people caught between desire and consequence, struggling to navigate a reality where every secret carried the potential to destroy everything they had. Despite the fear, despite the risk, the attraction remained undeniable. Every glance, every subtle brush of hands was a reminder that temptation was a powerful, unrelenting force, one they could neither fully resist nor safely ignore. As night fell, Emily and William found themselves sitting in the dim light, a fragile silence stretching between them. They both knew the danger was real, but so was the fire they had ignited. And as long as that fire burned, the game of secrecy and desire would continue, each day a delicate balance between passion and peril. The tranquility of the evening was shattered by the sudden ring of the doorbell. Emily's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively froze. William's hand tightened on hers, a silent signal that danger had arrived. Whoever had been watching them had taken the next step, and now the illusion of safety had been stripped away. Emily crossed the living room cautiously, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table as if it could anchor her to sanity. Who could it be at this hour? She whispered, her voice barely audible. William moved behind her, the weight of his presence both comforting and tense. Don't open it until we know, he murmured, but the sound of the doorbell made it impossible to wait. Emily hesitated, then opened the door to see a neighbor casually leaning against the frame, holding a package. Evening. Sorry to bother you. Just delivering this from the post office. Emily took the box, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. Thank you, she said, closing the door quickly. The anonymity of the courier hadn't eased her fear. If anything, it had heightened it. William's gaze was sharp, scanning the perimeter, as if the shadows themselves might betray the identity of the watcher. As Emily set the package down, she noticed a folded note taped to the top. Her pulse raced, and she glanced at William, whose eyes reflected the same tension. Slowly, she opened it, revealing a message that made the blood drain from her face. I know what's been happening. Be careful, or everything will come to light. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. William exhaled slowly, his mind working through the possibilities. They're escalating, he said, his voice taut. This isn't just about watching anymore. They're sending warnings. Emily sank into the sofa, her hands clutching the note. We have to be careful. One wrong move, one careless glance, and it could all be over. The tension between them was almost unbearable, yet the desire that had drawn them together burned even stronger in the face of this new threat. Every shared look, every touch, carried the weight of danger and the thrill of secrecy. That night, as they lay awake in separate rooms, the walls of the house seemed to close in. They both understood that the threat outside was only the beginning. Someone knew, someone was watching, and the line between safety and exposure had been crossed. The game of secrecy had intensified, and Emily and William could no longer pretend that the world beyond their walls was unaware of the fire they had ignited. The shadows at the door were not just physical. They represented the first cracks in the delicate balance between desire, morality, and consequence. And Emily and William knew that from this moment forward, every choice they made could tip the scale, sending their carefully hidden passion into the unforgiving light of truth. Emily sat at the kitchen table, the note still clutched in her hands, her mind racing with possibilities. William leaned against the counter, arms crossed, every muscle taut with the tension of unspoken fear. The house felt like a cage, and outside, the unknown observer loomed like a shadow threatening to expose everything. "We need a plan," William finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the worry simmering underneath. "We can't let this spiral out of control. Whoever this is, they have eyes on us. We need to figure out how to stay one step ahead." Emily nodded, swallowing hard. "I agree. But what can we do? We don't even know who's watching. Every delivery, every visitor. It could be anyone." Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the note, the paper crumpling slightly under her nervous touch. William paced the room. "We start by controlling what they can see. No more late-night moments in the living room. Keep our interactions private. If they think nothing's happening, they might back off." Emily glanced up, a mix of fear and longing in her eyes. "It's going to be hard. Every touch, every glance. It's like they're chasing us, but we can't just stop." He walked over, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We can't stop, Emily, but we can be smarter. We can be careful. Think of it like walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and the fall will be devastating." The following days were filled with calculated caution. Their interactions, once spontaneous and passionate, now required silent planning. Even in the kitchen or living room, a brush of hands was timed, measured, as though rehearsed. Every moment together carried the weight of possibility and peril. Emily felt the tension gnawing at her, a mix of desire and dread. Each glance at William reminded her of their connection, but also of the threat pressing against them. She couldn't ignore the thrill. The danger made the attraction even more magnetic, but she also understood that a single misstep could unravel everything. William, meanwhile, became vigilant, watching every delivery, every passerby, even the sounds of the neighborhood. The observer's presence loomed over them like an invisible predator. And though he tried to focus on controlling the external threat, he couldn't escape the pull Emily held over him, the constant reminder that passion and risk had become inseparable in their lives. By nightfall, they often found themselves in a tense silence, side by side yet worlds apart, both aware that the stakes had escalated. The house had become a battleground of desire, secrecy, and fear, and Emily and William had to navigate it carefully, with every decision carrying the potential to destroy the delicate balance they fought so hard to maintain. The evening had started quietly, the house bathed in the soft glow of lamps and the distant hum of the neighborhood. Emily was sorting through her orders for her online boutique, while William read the newspaper in the living room, both trying to maintain the careful routine they had established. Then the unexpected happened. A sharp knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. Emily froze, her hand hovering over the stack of papers on the table. William's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Who could that be?" Emily whispered, a tremor in her voice. William approached cautiously. "We don't know. Stay back." He opened the door just slightly, enough to peek through the peephole. Outside stood a young woman, unfamiliar, with an urgent look in her eyes. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, her voice tense. My car broke down just down the street. I didn't know where else to go. Could I use your phone? Emily and William exchanged a brief glance, weighing the risks. The last thing they needed was an outsider wandering into their carefully controlled environment. But the woman's fear seemed genuine, and leaving her outside felt wrong. "Okay, just come inside," Emily said finally, stepping back. William followed silently, tense. As the woman entered, something about her eyes made Emily's stomach twist. There was an almost imperceptible spark of recognition, a subtle awareness in her gaze. Emily's pulse quickened. Could she somehow know what had happened? The woman fumbled with her phone, dialing her contacts. "Thanks. I didn't know what else to do. I was worried," she said nervously. William watched her closely, unease growing in his chest. Every movement, every glance, felt like a potential threat. Emily's heart raced, a mix of desire, fear, and paranoia intertwining. Their secret was fragile, and now it had been pushed dangerously close to exposure. After a few minutes, the woman's call ended, and she smiled politely. "Thank you again for letting me in. I really appreciate it. I'll be on my way." Emily nodded, trying to hide the tension in her hands. William escorted the woman to the door, his mind racing with the implications. A stranger had entered their home, and even if she didn't know anything, the risk had escalated. As the door closed behind the visitor, Emily and William stood in silence, the house suddenly feeling colder, more exposed. They both understood that this incident, though seemingly innocuous, had changed the stakes. Their careful secrecy had been threatened, and the reality of their situation pressed in on them like never before. The night stretched on, filled with unspoken fear and simmering desire. Every glance between them was laced with tension, pleasure and peril intertwined, reminding them that temptation was no longer just a private matter. The following night, the house felt different, tense, like the walls themselves were aware of the invisible threat lurking outside. Emily paced the living room, each step measured, every glance at the window heavy with suspicion. William watched from the kitchen doorway, his jaw tight, arms folded. "We can't ignore this anymore," William said, his voice low but firm. "Someone is following us. They know something, and they're getting bolder." Emily stopped pacing, meeting his gaze. Her eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and determination. "What do you mean, bolder?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before William could answer, a sudden crash echoed from the backyard, a sound of shattering glass. Both of them froze. Emily's heart raced as William moved instinctively toward the door, signaling her to stay back. Peering outside through the window, they saw a shadow slipping away into the night, leaving behind broken shards of what had been a simple garden lantern. The intruder hadn't spoken, hadn't revealed themselves, but the message was clear. They were watching, and now they had crossed a line. Emily swallowed hard. "They're testing us," she murmured, "seeing how far they can go without being caught." William's hands clenched into fists. "No! We need to take action before it gets worse. They're not just observers anymore. They want control, and they'll stop at nothing." For the first time, Emily felt the weight of their secret fully press against her chest. Every touch, every hidden glance between them now carried a double-edged risk, pleasure and desire shadowed by danger. She realized that their private world had been invaded, and the consequences could shatter the fragile balance they had built. The tension between them was palpable. William stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "We need to be smarter. Every move we make has to be calculated. No more carelessness. We protect ourselves or everything we've built, everything we feel, could be exposed." Emily nodded, her fingers brushing his arm, a silent acknowledgement of both fear and intimacy. Their bond had grown in secrecy, and now that bond was being tested by the very world outside that threatened to expose it. They spent the rest of the night sitting together in the dim light of the living room, the hum of the city outside a distant reminder that the world beyond their walls was relentless. Every sound, The wind rattling the windows, the distant bark of a dog, felt amplified, each a potential warning of the watcher returning. As dawn approached, Emily and William shared a quiet, tense understanding. The danger was no longer abstract. It was real, immediate, and inescapable, and from this point forward, every choice, every whispered moment, every glance could determine whether their secret survived or was destroyed. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting narrow stripes across the living room where Emily and William sat, huddled over a laptop and scattered notes. Silence filled the room, broken only by the occasional rustle of paper or the soft tap of fingers on the keyboard. "We can't just wait for them to come back," William said, his voice firm. "We need to anticipate their moves. If they're this bold already, they won't hesitate next time." Emily nodded, biting her lip. "I've been thinking, maybe we should start tracking patterns. Who comes by, when deliveries happen, any strange sounds, anything that could give us a lead." William leaned back, arms crossed, considering her suggestion. "Good. And we need a safe zone. Private rooms, locked doors, cameras. If they're watching, we take control of the environment. No more surprises." They spent hours mapping the neighborhood, noting entrances, exits, and potential hiding spots. Every detail mattered. Emily jotted notes furiously, while William cross-referenced them with their past encounters: stray packages, unusual cars, fleeting shadows outside windows. "It's exhausting," Emily admitted, her shoulders slumping. "And scary. But if we do this right, we might finally feel safe again." Her eyes met his, and in that moment, a spark of determination passed between them. Despite the fear, despite the risk, they refused to be powerless. William reached over, lightly touching her hand. "We're in this together. Whatever happens, we face it as a team. Nothing will stop us, not them, not anyone." As night fell, they implemented the first phase of their plan. Cameras discreetly placed around the perimeter, lights timed to give the illusion of activity even when they were asleep, and a secret system of codes and signals to communicate silently. Every action was deliberate, measured, designed to reclaim the power that had slipped through their fingers. Emily watched William set up the last camera, her heart beating fast, not just from the adrenaline, but from the proximity, the intimacy of working side by side. Even in the face of danger, there was a tension between them, a magnetic pull neither could deny. By the time they finished, the house felt transformed. No longer a vulnerable target, it became a fortress, both physical and emotional. They had regained some semblance of control, but Emily knew the threat was far from gone. Sitting together on the couch, hands intertwined, she whispered, "We did all we can for now. But what if they find a way around it?" William tightened his grip on her hand. "Then we adapt. We survive. That's all we can do." The night stretched on, filled with quiet vigilance and an undercurrent of tension. Every sound outside could be a threat, every shadow a potential intruder. Yet in that controlled chaos, Emily and William found a fragile balance, a combination of fear, desire, and determination that would guide them through the uncertain nights ahead. The night had grown unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that presses against the skin, making every sound amplified. Emily sat at the kitchen counter, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of a mug, while William monitored the security feed on his laptop. "Something's off," William muttered, eyes darting across the screen. "There's movement? Outside?" Emily leaned closer, her breath catching. The camera feed showed a shadow slipping along the side of the house, careful, deliberate. Whoever it was knew the layout, knew where to move to remain unseen. "That's too close," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "They're inside the perimeter." William's jaw tightened. "Stay calm, don't panic, we've prepared for this." But even as he said it, his pulse raced. The quiet confidence of hours spent planning suddenly collided with the raw fear of confrontation. The shadow paused at the back door. A faint scrape echoed through the night, a metallic sound that sent shivers down Emily's spine. William grabbed a flashlight and motioned for her to move to the safe room, the hidden sanctuary they had fortified. They watched together as the figure tried the door handle. Locked. The intruder cursed under their breath, pounding once, twice, testing their patience. Emily clutched William's arm, eyes wide, every nerve alert. "We need to do more than watch," William said, voice low but urgent. "I can't let them breach the house." Emily nodded, heart hammering, as they executed the next phase of their plan. Lights flickered, a loud alarm sounded, and a strategically placed camera triggered a recorded barking sound, simulating a dog in the yard. The figure hesitated, assessing the risk, but the tension only grew. Suddenly, a second figure emerged from the shadows, moving towards the front of the house. Emily gasped. They were surrounded, clever and bold, testing boundaries in a way that left no room for error. William moved to the window, whispering instructions. "Emily, stay calm. Follow my lead. We're in control. Remember, every move is deliberate." Emily nodded, feeling a mix of fear and adrenaline. Her mind raced, every possibility flickering like lightning. The danger was real, immediate, but so was the bond between them, the shared experience, the unspoken trust, the undeniable tension that had grown stronger with each challenge. For the first time, Emily realized that the night would test more than their strategic skills. It would test their courage, their trust in each other, and their ability to face the shadows closing in on the fragile world they had built. The house felt alive with tension, every creak of the floorboards and whisper of wind amplified in the confined space. Emily's heart pounded as William moved with precision, checking locks and silently signaling her. "We can't let them corner us," William whispered, his eyes scanning the feed. "We need to take initiative before they get bolder." Emily nodded, gripping the small flashlight in her hand like a lifeline. Her pulse raced, but beneath the fear, a spark of resolve ignited. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was part of the defense. Using the layout of the house to their advantage, William led Emily through a series of concealed doors and hallways, each turn calculated to confuse any intruder. Meanwhile, he activated a series of motion sensors that triggered lights and alarms strategically. The shadows outside flinched, revealing glimpses of their intruders' faces, furtive, calculating, yet cautious. Emily's mind raced. Every step, every flash of light, every sound became part of a chess game against the unknown assailants. She realized that their fear could be transformed into power if they stayed united and precise. Suddenly, one of the intruders tried to bypass the alarms, heading for the basement entrance. William acted immediately, intercepting the figure with a controlled force that left both of them off balance but unharmed. Emily followed, her presence a silent reinforcement. Together they guided the intruder into a section rigged with noise traps and locked doors. The second intruder, startled, hesitated as lights flickered and recorded barks echoed around the property. William seized the moment, using a combination of verbal commands and assertive body language to corral the shadowy figure. Emily moved beside him, heart racing, aware of the physical proximity, but too focused on survival to let tension distract her. For a moment, the adrenaline created a strange clarity, fear and desire coexisting, sharpened senses, and an unspoken bond between them stronger than ever. Every glance, every subtle touch reinforced their trust. In the midst of danger, their connection became a lifeline, a silent affirmation that they were facing the threat together. By dawn, the intruders had retreated, thwarted by William and Emily's strategic precision. The house, once vulnerable, now felt like a fortress, a testament to their resilience. They collapsed on the couch, breaths heavy, bodies trembling, not just from exertion but from the shared intensity of the night. Emily whispered, her voice raw but determined, "We did it. We actually did it." William nodded, placing a hand over hers. "Together. always together. For the first time in days, they felt a flicker of safety, a momentary reprieve. Yet both knew this victory was temporary. The shadows outside would return, and with them, new tests of courage, trust, and the strength of their bond. The morning sun cast a pale glow through the curtains, but Emily and William barely noticed. Their bodies were exhausted, yet their minds refused to rest. The adrenaline from last night still coursed through their veins, mingling with a deep, gnawing unease. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. "I can't stop thinking about them," she whispered, voice tight. "Even after they ran, I feel like they're still here." William joined her, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "I know, I feel it too. It's not just about the physical threat, it's in our heads now. Every creak, every shadow. We're expecting them to come back. They had defended their home, outsmarted the intruders. But the psychological toll was heavier than the physical effort. Sleep was elusive, thoughts looping endlessly. What if they return? What if next time we're not fast enough? Emily shivered, pressing her forehead against William's chest. "I hate that I feel scared. I hate that it lingers, like a shadow I can't shake off." William kissed the top of her head. "Fear is natural. We survived because we used it, controlled it, but we can't let it own us. Not yet." They spent the day reinforcing their defenses, but every movement, every glance over the shoulder was tinged with tension. Emily realized that the house, once their sanctuary, now carried echoes of the night's terror. Even the safe room seemed smaller, claustrophobic, haunted by the memory of intruders pressing against their boundaries. Yet amidst the fear, a subtle bond had deepened. The intensity of the previous night forged an unspoken connection between them, a shared resilience that comforted more than words could. Emily finally allowed herself a small smile. "At least we know we can handle it together, whatever comes next." William squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. "Together, always. We face the shadows, and we survive." As dusk approached, the weight of the day pressed down. But they were determined. Tomorrow would bring more planning, more vigilance, but for now, they allowed themselves a fragile moment of reprieve, aware that the battle wasn't over, yet strengthened by the trust and courage that had kept them alive so far. The night was unusually still, the kind of silence that presses into your bones and makes every sound outside feel amplified. Emily stood by the window, her eyes scanning the darkened street. Something had changed. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. "William, something's different tonight," she murmured, her voice tight with unease. William joined her, checking the security monitors once more. "What do you mean?" Emily shook her head, her fingers tracing the edge of the windowsill. "I don't know. It's just a feeling, like we're being watched differently, more calculated, like they're learning." Her intuition wasn't wrong. In the shadows beyond the perimeter, a new figure moved, silent, deliberate, studying the house from a distance. Unlike the previous intruders, there was a patience here, a cunning that spoke of someone experienced and confident. "We need to stay calm," William said, though his voice betrayed tension. "We can't act rashly. We observe first, anticipate next." Emily nodded, but inside, fear mingled with frustration. She was tired of being hunted, tired of the constant vigilance, tired of the way her every move had become a measure of survival. Yet, she also knew, the moment demanded action. Hesitation could cost them everything. A knock at the front door shattered the quiet. Emily jumped, heart pounding. William signaled her to stay back while he approached. The visitor's voice was calm, almost casual. "May I come in?" the stranger asked, though the words carried an undercurrent of menace. Emily's mind raced. Was this a scout, someone connected to the previous attacks, or worse, someone with leverage over their vulnerabilities? She felt trapped between fear and instinct, the need to protect herself and William conflicting with the urge to understand who had appeared on their threshold. William opened the door slightly, eyes narrowed. "Who are you? What do you want?" The stranger smiled faintly, a chilling calmness in their gaze. "I'm here because you've been very clever, but cleverness only lasts so long. You can't hide forever." Emily's pulse surged, a mixture of dread and adrenaline. She realized immediately that this was different. The threat wasn't just physical anymore. It was psychological, strategic, and far more dangerous. She glanced at William, whose jaw was tight but resolute. Their silent understanding was clear. Tonight would test not just their strength but their decision-making, their trust in each other, and their ability to navigate danger with clarity. Emily took a deep breath, gripping William's hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together." William nodded, matching her resolve, always together. As the night stretched on, the unknown figure lingered, probing, watching, forcing Emily and William into a tense standoff that would demand cunning, courage, and a willingness to make impossible choices. The air inside the house felt thick, each shadow seeming to stretch longer than it should. Emily and William moved silently through the living room, their eyes darting to every corner. The presence outside wasn't just a threat, it was an accusation, a constant reminder that they couldn't afford mistakes. "We need to lure them out," William whispered, voice low but firm. "If we wait, they'll only get bolder." Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her mind raced with strategies and worst-case scenarios. "What do you suggest?" she asked, gripping the edge of the counter. William outlined a plan, precise and daring. They would use the house itself as a trap, lights, noises, strategically placed obstacles to mislead and corner the intruder. It was risky. Any misstep could give the stranger the upper hand, but hesitation was more dangerous. Emily took a deep breath, her heartbeat sinking with the tension in the room. "Then let's do it," she said. "We can't let fear control us." As night deepened, they executed the plan. Lights flickered in patterns designed to mimic movement, recordings of footsteps echoed through the hallways, and hidden cameras captured every reaction outside. The intruder, patient and calculating, began to follow the cues, unaware that the house itself had become a controlled battlefield. Emily's pulse surged as she coordinated with William. Every sound, every movement required split-second decisions. The line between strategy and instinct blurred, and the adrenaline sharpened her senses. She could almost feel the intruder's attention, like a shadow stretching across the walls. Suddenly, a figure burst through the side gate and the trap sprang. Lights flashed, alarms blared, and strategically placed obstacles slowed the intruder's advance. Emily moved with calculated precision, guiding William as he intercepted the threat. The intruder struggled, disoriented by the chaos they had unknowingly entered. Emily and William worked in unison, anticipating each move, their coordination seamless despite the danger. Each heartbeat felt like a drum, echoing in the tense night. Finally, with a combination of force, strategy, and courage, the intruder was cornered and forced to retreat. Emily collapsed into William's arms, trembling from both relief and the intensity of the night. "We did it," Emily whispered, voice trembling. "We actually did it." William held her close, eyes scanning the perimeter even as their bodies relaxed. "For now, but we must remain vigilant. Danger doesn't rest, and neither can we." As dawn approached, the house finally settled into a fragile quiet. Emily and William knew that the risk had been immense, but it had also forged their bond even stronger, a partnership forged in fear, strategy, and the relentless will to survive. The house was quiet now, but Emily and William couldn't shake the tension. The intruder had retreated, but the risk lingered like a shadow over every corner of their home. They knew that tonight's victory came with consequences. "William, we can't underestimate them," Emily said, her voice low, eyes scanning the perimeter. "They learned something tonight, even if we caught them off guard." William nodded, rubbing his temples. Yeah, I saw it in their eyes. There's a flaw, though, a pattern. They rely too much on patience, on observation. If we can predict their next move, we can control it. Emily leaned against the wall, feeling both exhausted and alert. The fear from before had evolved. Now it was tactical. Every creak, every distant sound could be a clue. She realized that surviving wasn't just about strength. It was about understanding the mind of the one hunting them. Together, they reviewed the night's events, replaying every action in their minds. The intruder's hesitation when they triggered the trap revealed a hint of inexperience, despite the calculated exterior. Emily noticed subtle tells, a twitch of the hand, a glance that lingered too long, that could be exploited. "We can use this," Emily said finally, a determined glint in her eyes. "We can turn their weakness against them, but we have to stay disciplined. No mistakes." William looked at her, pride mixing with concern. "I trust you, but it's a dangerous game. One misstep, and we lose the advantage." The rest of the night was spent reinforcing defenses and mapping contingencies. They moved through the house with precision, setting up signals, alarms, and escape routes, learning to anticipate every possible move the intruder might take next. Even as exhaustion weighed down their bodies, their minds sharpened. Emily felt a rush of empowerment. Finally, they weren't just reacting, they were strategizing. They were reclaiming control over their lives, turning fear into calculated action. As dawn approached, Emily glanced at William. "We're ready," she whispered. "Whatever comes next, we can handle it." Together, William nodded, a firm determination in his gaze. Together, and this time we dictate the terms. The night's lessons had forged a new confidence in them. They knew the intruder would return, but now Emily and William were prepared, not just to survive, but to seize the advantage, exploiting every weakness their enemy revealed. The night air was sharp, carrying a sense of foreboding that made Emily's skin prickle. Every sound seemed magnified, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, even the creak of the old floorboards inside the house. She and William knew it was coming. "They're back," William muttered, scanning the perimeter through the night vision cameras. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. Emily's heart raced. "I can feel it. They're testing us now, seeing if we've learned, seeing if we've changed." The intruder moved with purpose this time, no hesitation, no careless errors. They were calculated, confident, and relentless. Every step seemed designed to probe the house, to find weaknesses in the defenses Emily and William had painstakingly set up. "We stick to the plan," William whispered. "We anticipate, we trap, we react, but with precision." Emily nodded, muscles tense, senses heightened. They had learned from the previous night. Now they were ready to turn the tables completely. Every shadow became a tool, every creak a signal. The house had become an extension of their strategy, a maze they controlled. The intruder reached the front door. Emily activated a subtle mechanism they had installed earlier, a hidden light blinding enough to disorient. William followed, positioning himself along the intruder's expected path. "What are you doing?" the intruder hissed, a mix of surprise and annoyance in their tone. Emily's heart pounded as she stepped out of the shadows. "You underestimated us," she said firmly. "Tonight the game changes." The intruder lunged, but William was ready, intercepting with calculated force. Emily used her surroundings to her advantage, guiding the intruder into a series of traps and diversions they had set. The battle became a test of wits as much as strength, a high-stakes game of strategy and anticipation. Minutes stretched like hours, each second a careful balance between fear and control. Sweat and adrenaline mixed on their skin, but neither Emily nor William faltered. Every move was deliberate, every reaction measured. Finally, with a combination of skill, foresight, and sheer determination, they cornered the intruder. The threat, relentless and cunning for weeks, was finally neutralized. Emily exhaled sharply, her body trembling from tension and relief. William pulled her close, his voice soft but steady. "We did it. We're safe. At least for now." Emily leaned into him, exhaustion and triumph mingling. "We faced the worst and we survived, together." As dawn broke, the house was still, the echoes of the night fading. Emily and William knew challenges could return, but tonight proved their strength, their unity, and their unwavering resolve. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting soft lines across the living room. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, shoulders heavy, eyes distant. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was fading, leaving a quiet exhaustion and the weight of everything they had endured. William joined her, silent at first, his hand brushing hers lightly. The touch was grounding, a reminder that they had survived, but the unspoken tension between them lingered. "We did it," he said softly, voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "The threat is gone, for now." Emily nodded, but the relief was bittersweet. "Yes, but I can't stop thinking about everything that happened. How close we came, how fragile it all was." She traced patterns on the armrest, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "I keep wondering, what if we hadn't been ready? What if one mistake had cost us everything?" William took a deep breath, leaning back and closing his eyes. "It's impossible not to think like that. The fear, the tension, it changes you. But it also teaches you, shows you who you really are, what you're capable of when it matters most." Emily's gaze softened as she looked at him. "I never imagined I could feel this, strong or so alive, even in the middle of danger. But I also never imagined the lingering fear, the constant awareness of how close we came to losing it all." They sat together in silence, letting the calm of the morning wash over them. The house, once a battleground, now seemed almost serene. Yet Emily knew the experience had left its mark, an indelible mix of triumph and trauma. "I think," she started slowly, "that part of me has changed forever. I can't go back to the person I was before all of this, and maybe that's not a bad thing." William reached over, squeezing her hand gently. "We survived, Emily, and we survived together. That changes everything. It doesn't erase the fear or the mistakes, but it gives us something stronger, a sense of what we can endure and what we can protect." Emily nodded, a small smile forming despite the lingering tension. "Together," she whispered. The word carried both comfort and determination, a promise that they would face whatever came next, side by side. Outside, the world continued on, unaware of the nights they had endured, the battles they had fought within the walls of their home. But Emily and William knew, and in knowing, they had reclaimed a measure of control and a future they could begin to shape on their own terms. Weeks had passed since the confrontation, and the house felt different now, lighter, calmer, as if it had absorbed the tension of the past and released it into the walls. Emily moved through each room with a sense of purpose, unpacking boxes, organizing, reclaiming her home not just as a space but as a sanctuary. William worked alongside her, careful yet confident. There was no hurry, no lingering tension of immediate danger. Their teamwork had evolved from survival instinct to genuine partnership, each decision informed by respect and trust rather than fear. "I never thought we'd make it here," Emily said one afternoon, pausing to look out the window at the sun-dappled garden. Her eyes softened, the weariness in them now replaced by a quiet satisfaction. "It feels like we can finally breathe." William nodded, adjusting a frame on the wall. "We fought to survive, and now we get to live. That's the difference. Survival alone is empty. Living is what we create together from now on." Emily smiled faintly, the tension in her shoulders easing. "I feel like I'm learning to trust again. In myself, in us. The fear is still there sometimes, a shadow at the edge of my mind, but it doesn't control me anymore. They spent their days restoring not just the physical space, but the rhythm of life, cooking together, laughing over small mistakes, and planning future projects that had nothing to do with danger or defense. Each day was a testament to resilience, a celebration of the ordinary yet precious moments they had fought to protect. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple, Emily sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching William tend the garden. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the safety they had reclaimed, for the bond that had been forged in fire, and for the quiet moments that now defined their lives. "Do you ever think about the past?" William asked quietly, joining her on the porch. "Sometimes," Emily admitted, "but I've realized it's not about forgetting. It's about taking the lessons and letting them guide us, not haunt us." He smiled, reaching for her hand. "Exactly. And now we get to shape our story, our future, one step at a time, together." As night fell, they watched the stars emerge, each one a reminder of the vastness of the world outside their struggles, of the possibilities still ahead. Emily felt a rare peace settle over her, a quiet confidence that no matter what challenges remained, they had the strength, the courage, and the love to face them together. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily allowed herself to truly exhale, letting the past fade gently into memory while embracing the promise of a life rebuilt on trust, hope, and resilience. The morning light poured gently through the windows, filling the house with a warmth that felt like a promise. Emily moved through the rooms with a quiet satisfaction, each step a reminder of how far they had come. William followed, carrying a small basket of freshly picked herbs from the garden. "Look at this place," Emily said softly, pausing in the living room. "It's ours, finally ours." William smiled, placing the basket on the counter. "It's more than a house now. It's home, and home is where we've rebuilt everything. Our trust, our peace, our lives." For months, they had worked quietly, day by day, reclaiming the space, healing the wounds, and nurturing their bond. The danger that had once loomed so large was now a memory, a shadow that reminded them of their strength, but no longer a threat. Emily walked to the window, watching the garden sway gently in the breeze. "I used to think that safety meant hiding, avoiding everything that could hurt me, but now I know it's about standing together, facing life fully, and embracing every moment, even the scary ones." William came to stand beside her, hand brushing hers. "And we did it. We faced the worst, and we came through stronger, closer, and wiser." A soft smile crossed Emily's face. "I can feel it now, the calm I've been searching for. Not the absence of challenges, but the presence of resilience, love, and hope." They spent the day in quiet companionship, savoring ordinary pleasures, preparing meals together, sharing stories, laughing at small mistakes, and simply being present for one another. There was no rush, no looming threat, only the gentle rhythm of life rebuilt and strengthened by what they had endured. As evening fell, they sat on the porch, the sky painted with hues of gold and pink. Emily rested her head on William's shoulder, letting the serenity of the moment wash over her. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked softly. William wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. "The next chapter? We live it, together, with courage, love, and patience. Every day is ours to shape." Emily closed her eyes, a feeling of completeness settling deep within her. "I've learned that peace isn't given, it's earned, and we've earned ours every step of the way." The night descended gently, stars twinkling above like silent witnesses to their journey. In the quiet, Emily and William found the closure they had longed for, a life rebuilt, a bond strengthened, and a future filled with possibility. For the first time, they truly felt free. Free to live, to love, and to embrace the peace they had fought so hard to claim. And as they sat together in that serene moment, the world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet, enduring promise of a life well lived and hearts fully healed.